Hey guys, it's Eraani from Stars and Iris, back with a promised new episode of Don't Go Broke for the Holidays. Now in this episode, we're making crafts. And when you're making crafts for the holidays, you really have to think about what someone will like. So usually you kind of have to know them a little bit. You have to know their interests, their hobbies. Sometimes all you really need to know though is their drink. So this episode of Don't Go Broke to the Holidays is the drink edition. Now the first craft I'm going to dive into is for coffee lovers. Now if you have been around the internet, I'm pretty sure it's well known now, but there is this new product from, I want to say it's called Coffee and Chains, where it's a little coffee carrier that's with leather and chain. 22 bucks. Not gonna make it. However, I really loved how it looks, so I want to try to make my own version. Now, just a heads up, this craft did not go as planned, so I had to improvise. But I don't really have a link to this particular craft. I was kind of going off of my own improvisation, but also I did use the template, or at least half the template, of Sewing Time's design for their own coffee carrier. So if you're interested to where I got my template, just go to that website, and it's basically that, just kind of cut it in half. But without further ado, let's get into it.
So materials I used were leather, a leather punch, scissors, a ruler, also some jewelry pliers, grommet set that I bought from Joann's, and some hardware like those latches with keychains and a bracelet and necklace. Of course, also hammer, string, and thread. Now right there, I am just trying to fit the grommet over my leather punch to see how big it is, and trying to test out really how it's going to work within that leather. As you can see, I made the hole too small. And I'm trying to stretch it out because I need to fit the bottom part of the grommet through it before I can even try to hammer it in. So I had to widen it with these cutters that I had. After I made about 4 cuts, I was able to fit it through, and then I wanted to try to hammer it, but it was a little bit loud and I have people live in my apartment. So I decided to try with some felt to see if that would soften the noise. It did not. I had to take it outside. But after that, I was able to fit it through, and it worked well enough. Now I'm taking the template that I got from Sewing Times, and I'm measuring out how big I'm going to make the template itself. I did fold it in half, but I need to make room for these grommets on this template the way I'm designing it. So I'm just measuring out about 1 inch, which you should give me enough room in space for the grommet to be far away from the edge of the seams and the cut edge. Of course, I'm just messing with the template right now, trying to get perfectly in half. Okay, got my template situation fixed up, and now I am drawing it out on the leather. Of course, measuring out that 1 inch right there, and then 1/2 inch at the bottom to kind of give it a tapered look. And of course, at this point, I'm hoping that the lines won't be too noticeable once I sew them in. But now time to cut, and you'll see I'm going to cut away soon. That's because it was really hard cutting this leather out, and I didn't need y'all to see me struggle. Now I cut it out, and this is where I realized that this leather, it's not going to work. It is too thick, so I had to improvise. And I pulled out what material I had in my closet, which were pants. And of course, these are either damaged or they're old. Now I'm still deciding which chain I want to use for the final product, so I'm testing them against the materials to see how I like how they look. I'll decide towards the end which one I want to use. Now I decided on the black material and already cut out the pieces I need. It's much thinner than leather, so I decided to double it up, and I'm using fabric tack to glue them together to stiffen them up. Yes, not professional, but I'm using what I got. Now I've glued the 2 pieces together, and it's much more stiffer, and to try to prevent fraying, I've glued the edges and I've let it dry, and so it's nice and flexible now and much more durable and a little bit thicker than how it started off with this material. Now next thing I need to do is sew on the lines, and of course I'm not going to use the string and thread I showed in the beginning. I'm going to be using just regular string and thread. And of course, since I don't think my pins will work going through this, since there is dried glue in this product, I'm using clamps instead. just so I can get a better fit. Now, I've already sewn up on these 2 seams, which was relatively easy and short. I'm not that great of a sewer, but even I could do this. Now I do have those 2 thread ends on each side, so I'm using the fabric tack right now just to kind of glue those down and prevent them from sticking out. Okay, and trying out the cup on the product, and it looks like a good fit. So next up is adding the grommets. So I'm pressing the grommets into the material itself where I want it to be so it can make an expression, and before I mark it out with the chalk, and then punch out the material. And now it's time to go ahead and add the grommets. Okay, so the grommets have been added. Looking good. This project is pretty much halfway done, but I just want to test it out to see how it really looks. I'm pretty excited at this point, not gonna lie. Okay, so at this point I still haven't decided if I'm using the bracelet or the necklace, but we're going to try it out first with the bracelet. So first I'm taking off these latches that are on these keychains, which you can find at any jewelry or craft store. I mainly wanted them because it'd be the easiest way for me to attach the hardware, such as the bracelet or the necklace, to the grommets. Okay, finally got it on. So now to attach the bracelet to the chain that's attached to the latches. I'm just using the claw or the clasp that's already on the bracelet itself. I didn't want to try taking anything apart until I was for sure about my decision. So really, I'm not using the jewelry plier until the other end of the bracelet, just because I didn't see the need to take off the other part at this time. Okay, so now testing the product out with the bracelet handle, seeing how it looks, how it feels. The feel is the most important to me because you're going to be carrying around your hand, and if you don't like how it feels, you're not going to use it. And I decided after testing both out that I'm going to go with the bracelet, and here is the final product. I think what won me over about the bracelet was how flat the handle was and how nice it felt to be carrying. Also, it looked a little bit more stylish than a necklace did.
Now, clearly, as you saw, mistakes are made. I thought I could work with the leather, but it became too thick and it was a little more work than I thought it was going to be. But also looking at it, I didn't think the texture of the leather itself was going to be really useful to what the product in the end was, because it seemed more absorbent than the leather that's used by coffee and chains. So I did switch to using material I had in the house. Sometimes you got to improvise, but I do think it came out pretty nice. I think it came out pretty snazzy. Obviously, as you saw, my edges are terrible. I did want it to try to tame the fraying from the material itself. So I did glue down the edges, and of course it's a little bit messy. I did try to cover it up with permanent marker, but it was somewhat successful. So it's a bit of a work in progress. I'm still going to try to work on cleaning this up a little bit, but I mean, this probably cost me about 10 bucks versus the 22 I would have had to buy it for. Now, it only cost me this much because I had a lot of the tools already. I had the leather punch, I had the jewelry pliers, the hammer technically, and I did have the material already. I didn't have the grommet, so I did have to buy that. I also had to buy some of the hardware. But again, some of these were either on sale or I used coupons for over at the craft store. So if you do want to take this on following my tutorial, please keep in mind how much you're going to need to spend either on tools and materials. However, is this not your, I was going to say cup of tea, but I guess it's cup of coffee in this sense. Sewing time is fully sewn with fabric and none of this hardware stuff. So if that's in your wheelhouse, if you can sew, if you have a sewing machine, that probably is a better option for you and maybe cheaper for you as well. If that's not in your wheelhouse, there's also a crocheted coffee cup sleeve, and I've made those in the past. They're easy to whip up and they're very much appreciated. Now, moving on to our second gift. We are helping out beer lovers or soda lovers. Now, there's two different Beerkoozie that I have posted up. One is to a YouTube channel, which I want to say that she's using neoprene, which is $20 a yard, and she has a sewing machine, I don't, and I wasn't going to buy a neoprene. I found a tutorial by Parties for Pennies for a much cheaper Beerkoozie, which might be more my skill set. All involved was 2mm foam sheets and not crazy glue, Gorilla Glue. I can do that. Again, just a heads up, if you're using Gorilla Glue, it's going to get messy, and read the instructions. You're going to see I make a mistake because although the time you need to clamp it is 2 hours, the time you need to cure it is 24 hours, and I did not read the instructions. So learn from my mistakes. But let's have fun.
The materials I use are foam sheets I got from Joann's, scissors, and Gorilla Glue, and of course a model can. So first you're going to trace out your pattern. So the size is around the measurement of the can ring. Long waist is going to be about 5 inches and a quarter, and then the height is going to be about 3 inches and 3/4. So just be sure to measure that out. There wasn't a real template from Parties to Pennies that I found, so I had to draw it out myself. It's not really that hard to do. You just kind of have to have your can there for easier drawing access, and let's get started. So once it's all cut out, it kind of looks like a TIE fighter at this point. You do want to know that your seam allowance for gluing is going to be about 1/4 inch on the side. So right now I'm just kind of measuring how the foam is going to fit around the can, to make sure I don't need to make any adjustments, because this is technically my second cut. First one was a little bit off, but that's okay. The foam's cheap. And I'm actually going to do a decorative design by using some contrasting blue foam to make it customized. So there is my little customization there. So now it's time to go ahead and glue. Okay, so now I finally have an idea of where my 1/4 inch is on the side I'm actually going to glue on, so time to go ahead and glue. So you just want to be careful with how close you get to the edge with Gorilla Glue. It does kind of spread, especially once you press it against the other side, so just be careful how close you are to that edge. Try to match up all of your corners, of course. Want to make it look even. Just because it's a cheap craft doesn't mean we can't make it look nice. And right now I'm looking for something to put underneath it because I'm afraid of that glue spilling out, but it doesn't look like I put too much, so I decided it's probably okay, but I like that. So all I really need at this point is to do the 2-hour clamp, so I just need something heavy to put on it. Okay, got my books. 2-hour weight, and then we are making the mistake where I don't let it cure for 24 hours before I try turning it out. And there it is, there's the rip. And you can tell I'm kind of a little bit upset about that. So now we need to get into assessment mode and then fixing mode or improv mode. I'm hoping at this point that a little more Gorilla Glue will help me salvage this. So it's about to get a little bit messy. Enjoy the show. So I think at this point I should have enough glue. Now the issue is trying to clamp it down so that it can try to fuse a little bit before it needs to cure. But obviously I don't want to use anything that's going to get stuck to it, so I'm going to use the same clamps that I use from the coffee craft, because that'll probably be the safest and easiest thing to pull apart. And I'm adding my decoration now. Again, you do want to be careful how much glue you use, and honestly if you're using Gorilla Glue, I probably wouldn't have done that inner cutout like I did. Again, mistakes were made, as you're gonna see. And of course need to put some weight on it so it can do the clamp thing for 2 hours. So since I'm waiting, I decided to go ahead and cut out another template from the piece of foam and actually sew it. I was having such a messy time with the Gorilla Glue. I thought that sewing couldn't honestly be that bad in comparison. So I'm testing that out right now with the model, and I'm actually surprised by how clean it looks, although the size is a bit bigger, probably because this template wasn't meant for Gorilla Glue. So here are the finished products. Here is the finished design, and the fit honestly isn't that bad. It just looks a little messy, unfortunately, because of all the mistakes I made. And compared to the one I made, now this one looks a lot cleaner. Of course, the size is a bit weird, but not bad really. Just kind of need a little tweaking on this one. Overall, not a bad craft.
Now, as you saw in that craft, mistakes were made. Obviously, there's a lot of mess in this particular craft, and the clamping that I used to try to fix it left a pretty bad impression. And also this is just completely messy. Obviously you saw that I made another one, this time sewn, and it did come out a lot cleaner. I didn't have as much issue with it. However, the sizing is a lot bigger in comparison to the one that used Gorilla Glue for the seams. And I think that's just, the template was meant for the Gorilla Glue not to be sewn. So if you do want to go this way, which I would recommend just because it's a lot cleaner, and it wasn't really that hard to sew this, I would try to find a different template, and I want to see if I can find an affordable material that's like foam but a little bit thicker. So I'm probably going to go check Goodwill's out. But I mean, this is still a pretty valid idea. It just needs to be tweaked a little bit. But I mean, the foam sheets itself, I think were like $1 at most. The Gorilla Glue, if you don't have it already, maybe $6 to $7 depending on what kind you get. So this is actually pretty affordable. So I can actually afford to, make a few until I got the recipe down. Now, if neither of these two crafts, as for the beer lovers, are in your wheelhouse, I did post another link about making a beer bottle opener. Now, that's complete out of my wheelhouse because a lot of it requires tools. Although there was a link, I want to say, to weird things you can use as a beer bottle opener. So just keep that in mind. Now, moving on to our next craft. This one is for the tea lovers. Now, the first link I posted for this is for a salt dough tea bag holder. So basically you make a dough in any shape that you want that fit over the rim of a cup. Usually a cup that doesn't have a handle, because usually a lot of people steep tea with tea bags will wrap the tea bag around the handle. But if you have a cup that doesn't have that, then what these do is they provide something for you to tie the tea bag onto. And these can be very affordable and very cute. I personally don't have flour in my house because I have a gluten sensitivity, so I don't buy it. But this could be a very affordable and practical gift for anyone you know that is a tea lover. The other link below that is what I did for this particular craft. It is making a teacup candle, and in this case you could buy your own wax. However, if you use candles as much as I do, more than likely you have a few that are almost all the way to the end but still have some wax in it, so I make heavy use of that. Enjoy.
Materials I used was a vessel of my choice, candle wicks, a hot glue gun, and of course all my used candles. So first you need to heat up the hot glue gun so that you can put some hot glue at the end of your candle wick, which you're then going to go ahead and stick into your vessel. And once it's there, it's time to boil some wax. Now you're going to, if you're using the same method I am, that where you are using up your old candles, you're going to want to put them all together once they're all melted, so it'll be easier to pour all in one go into your vessel of choice. And of course there I am pouring, and I use chopsticks to keep my candle wick standing up, and I added some tea leaves for a finishing touch. And there it is, your teacup candle. It's actually pretty cute, isn't it?
So as you saw, it's not a particularly hard craft. Now I do want to say that I found this cup at Goodwill. And the reason I chose this cup is that it honestly reminds me of a lot of Japanese teacups that don't have handles, because the thought behind it is that the tea will help warm up your hands as you drink it. And so I couldn't pass this up. I found this for $2 at Goodwill. You may have some cups already, which can make this craft cheaper for you, or you can probably find something at a dollar store, although they don't really have teacups per se, they more so have mugs. Now the wicks themselves, depending where you go, they can be anywhere from $3 to $5. I do a lot of candle crafts, so usually I would have some, but I ran out, so I had to buy some. And you do want to keep in mind the thickness of your wick in comparison to your teacup. If your teacup is pretty large, you want a thicker wick. My teacup was relatively small, so I chose a regular wick, or smaller wick if you will. And I do want to say that there was a lot of debris in my leftover used candles. And normally I would have a bit of cheesecloth before I'm pouring it into my final vessel to catch all of that. However, I didn't have any and I didn't have time to buy it, so we had to make do. But I did manage to fish out the extra metal candle wicks ends out with the chopstick that you saw me use to hold the wick up straight at the end when the wax was drying. So there is ways you can get some of the debris out, but unless you have something like the cheesecloth to kind of help really strain it properly, you may have to accept that there's going to be a little bit of debris or clean your candles your used candles before you use them. There's always some hiding no matter how well I clean it, so I kind of live with it. But that was that craft. Again, very easy, and with the little added touch of the tea leaves on top, it kind of really gives it that nice tea finish in my opinion. Because if you're using used wax like me, more than likely you're not going to have a very defined smell from that candle. But I do think the tea leaves kind of provide not only a nice decorative touch, but I think if you use enough of it, there might be a nice smell, which I've been kind of using it on and off in my bathroom, so I'll let you know. Okay, moving on to our next craft. This one's for the wine lovers. Now, the first link is in my wheelhouse, so I'm going to talk about that. I can paint, so this one's very easy for me. Now, keep in mind, if you decide to use this craft, the exact paints you need are going to be an enamel paint or something specific to glassware. Mainly because if you want this to last, then you need something that you can cure so that it's dishwasher friendly, or else you may just have to hand wash it for the rest of your life. And if you're gifting this to someone, they might not be aware of that, or they might not want to hand wash it for the rest of their life. Now, these paints that I bought were about $3 each. So I try to keep it minimal and only bought 3 that I thought I absolutely needed. That cost me about $10 in total. So that's not too bad for me, mainly because I already had the wine glass and I had the brushes. So if you do have to buy paints for this, keep in mind that you might want to keep this a minimal palette so this doesn't really hurt your budget. But without further ado, let's get to the craft.
Okay, so materials I used was full guard enamel gloss paints, some brushes, a paper plate, and my wine glass, of course. So first we're putting our paint out onto the paper plate, and we're going to go ahead and dive in with the green and start painting. And I haven't really decided at this point what I really wanted to do, but I figured I might just paint and see where it takes me. So let's enjoy. Now keep in mind that you can go ahead and mix these colors to create new colors. I use green and yellow together to make another shade for the leaves. And after you see me using the red, you'll see that I'm going to mix the yellow and red together to get an orange so I can get more colors out from these flowers that I'm making, because I decided at this point I am doing a Arizona bird of paradise. Want to note what makes the color mud? Colors on the opposite side on the color wheel. But mud is actually a good shade sometimes when you need some dimensions in a plant. So green and red will do that for you. Now be sure to read the instructions on your bottle in regards to curing your item. As you can see, I have added some extra details such as some little glowing lights and my name, and I let it air dry according to the time on the bottle before I'm putting it into the cold oven and setting it to 350 as per instructions. And once it's completely heat up, which my oven will take about 15 minutes to do, I'm setting the timer for 30 minutes before I turn the oven off and let the vessel cool. Once that's done, it's all cured.
Now I love how this turned out. So cute. It's part of my new favorite cup now. I don't think I'm going to give this away. But again, be sure to read the instructions in regards to curing this, because you have to let it air dry a little bit before you put it in the oven, cold oven, and then bring it up to temperature. And then once it's up to temperature, the time that the instructions say you need to cure it for. And then for the particular set that I use, it had me turn off the oven and let the glass come to room temperature in the oven itself before I could handle it. Now it should be dishwasher safe, so we will find out. Now, if this is not in your wheelhouse or if it's not realistic for you, I did post 2 other crafts. These are in 2 different skill sets for me. The one after this is for making a bathtub wine rack kind of tray. If you're good at woodworking, this might work for you. If not, maybe not. The other one is a wine rack or wine carrier for your bike. Now that's a little bit more leather work that can have some sewing in it. It may have some grommets. So if that's something you might be interested in, please check out the links below. Now without further ado, we're going to go into our last craft. And for the next group, we're doing hot chocolate lovers. The best for last, of course, right? So the easiest gift to give hot chocolate lovers is hot chocolate. Now I posted 3 different links for hot chocolate lovers. One is for a powdered hot chocolate mix that you can give. The other 2 are hot chocolate sticks. Now, I did try to find the more affordable and easy recipes for these particular hot chocolate sticks. Keep in mind, you don't have to choose these. I tried to choose the ones that were easy on your budget, but there are more complicated, a lot more complex and rich recipes. I just chose what would be easier on my budget and what I already had here. Did have to buy the melting chocolate or the chocolate chips and the popsicle sticks, but most everything else I already had in my house. So this is super budget friendly for me and can actually be a very easy gift. So without further ado, let's make some hot chocolate sticks.
Materials I used were chocolate chips, craft sticks, cocoa powder, salt, some vanilla extract. I happen to have some cupcake liners and of course my cupcake mold, which you can use anything else really. So first you're going to put 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder aside in a bowl, and we're going to go ahead and put our salt, and I've decided to put my vanilla extract in this. And my reason for that is because the recipe I'm using does not want a vanilla extract that has water in it, but that's the one I have. The reason apparently behind that in the recipe, it says because the chocolate will seize up if there's water. So I'm trying a method to see if I can circumvent that without having to buy vanilla powder. So I mixed the cocoa powder, salt, and vanilla extract together and try to blend as well as possible before putting it in a preheated oven for about 10 minutes, maybe less. You really just want to wait until you kind of get a very dry powder, which means that all the water has evaporated, and looks like it has. So next you're going to get your chocolate chips and you're going to melt them. Now I decided to go through the microwave method, which basically just get a microwave safe bowl and you cook it for about 30-second intervals, and between each 30-second interval you're going to take it out and stir it around. Basically you want to get the chocolate nice and melty like it is here, and even if you see those little lumps there, it's still pretty warm, so as long as you stir it you'll get it smooth like there. And then you're going to pour in your dry mixture like I'm doing here and mix that in. Now I didn't list this in the ingredients, but I am using a piping bag to go ahead and dispense my chocolate. You don't have to. You can use a spoon or you can even use a Ziploc bag. But I found this was easier and I happen to have this in the house. So now I am pouring my chocolates in the mold. We're trying to get at least 12 popsicle sticks. So I'm going to use a tray here and some of this tray here. Now it's kind of lumpy now, so I did tap them down to get them smoothed out. And next I'm going to go ahead and add a optional decoration or optional topping, which in this case is marshmallows because I had that on hand and I always think of marshmallows when I think of hot chocolate. And I'm using these cupcake liners to help my popsicle sticks stand in the mold itself while they're chilling. After they're chilled for about 30 minutes, you'll just need to pop them out, and you may need to use a little bit of heat to loosen them. And you can put them in cellophane and gift them already. I decided to put them in some wrappers and store them for the time being, but look at it.
Okay, so this was a pretty easy recipe for me. A little messy, I will say. The recipe that I used said not to use any vanilla extract that had water or alcohol. Guess which one I had? My solution to that was to incorporate in the powdered ingredients, mix it up, and then dry it out. So hopefully get rid of any water so that it wouldn't seize up the melted chocolate once I drank it. But other than that, the rest of the recipe went off without a hitch. And this is actually really easy to use once they're set, because all you do is just heat up a cup of warm milk of your choosing and then just stir it in. And it tastes so good. So very easy gift. This is probably the most affordable gift, honestly. At least for me, again, because I had most of the ingredients already, so this really didn't cost me much. And this made at least 12 hot chocolate sticks to 12 people. Super easy. And you don't have to use mini marshmallows. That's why I kind of didn't list it in the ingredients at first, because that's optional. You can use sea salt, you can use candies, candy canes, anything else really. I hope you all enjoyed the crafts I made. Like I said, mistakes are made. Mistakes are made. Obviously, some lessons learned here. Some crafts I'm going to be kind of working on and polishing up still. But I do hope that you enjoyed this episode and that you stick around for the next one. I'm still planning out the next episode, but I believe we're going to go in the way of hobbies. We'll see what happens next. But Please like and subscribe if you're watching YouTube, or follow if you're on Instagram and Facebook. And I hope to see you in the next episode. Bye.